Hey everybody, and welcome to Josh Lioce's video blog. This week we're talking about 6 things you need to pay attention if you're looking at buying a home that was flipped. Stay right here, I'll be right back. Alright, welcome back. So you're looking at a home and you know it's been recently flipped. There are some things you need to really pay close attention to ensure that this flip was done correctly. I think we all can know and understand that not every person is going to do the same kind of job or bring the same kind of education and experience to a construction site. So paying attention to these things are imperative for you if you're looking at this home to buy as your next or forever home. All right, here we go. Number 1, building permits. Building permits are probably the most important thing you can look at. You need to make sure, based on the work that you see with your realtor who's walking through the house or just your general knowledge and education, that there are permits pulled for specific things. If a roof was done, windows are done, kitchens were remodeled, electrical outlets or lighting were added or changed, if the plumbing was changed, if bathrooms were renovated, if so on and so forth, if so many things were done, you need to ensure permits were pulled, and you need to make sure not only were they pulled, but were they signed off on and have a final inspection on. So sometimes you'll see permits that are pulled, but they're never signed off on. Or sometimes you'll see a permit was pulled, but it doesn't describe the renovation to its fullest extent. So pay close attention, do some due diligence, make sure you check with the town hall, speak with the building department, speak to the building commissioner, and ensure that the proper permits were pulled for all the work done in that house and that they have been signed off on. All right, number 2, painting. Now, while painting seems easy, if specific surfaces aren't prepared or painted correctly, you're going to find yourself with chipping and peeling paint in short time. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about wood surfaces, whether it's wood trim, whether it's the cabinets in the kitchen, or the vanities. If those things were painted, which a lot of flippers will do to save on the expense of renovating or removing trim or removing the cabinets, they'll paint them. If it's not prepared and painted correctly with the right kind of paint, that paint is not going to stick for very long. And the second you touch it, or if somebody hits it, or if one of the kids run into something, you're going to find that paint is going to become very loose, brittle, chip, peel, and completely come off. So you want to make sure if you see painted surfaces, you want to ask the specific question on how it was prepped and was it painted with the right kind of paint. All right, number 3, plumbing and electrical. Now, like we talked about number 1, we want to make sure permits were pulled in these areas, but you also want to make sure the work was done completely correct, right? You want to make sure you really take a good look at this and make sure that you're paying attention. So plumbing-wise, you want to make sure that any of the things that were replaced from a plumbing standpoint, especially when you're down in the basement and looking at the pipes, that old stuff and new stuff weren't kind of fit together. That everything was replaced, maybe to a main out on the sewer line, or any of the plumbing to any of the fixtures upstairs. You want to look at those connections and make sure that you talk to a professional to make sure it was done correctly. You also want to check that pressure and make sure things were vented correctly. You want to flush the toilet and turn on the sink at the same time and make sure everything still works. You'll be surprised how many times we do this and something isn't functioning correctly. So really pay attention to plumbing. And when it comes to electrical, you want to make sure that when you turn on a light switch, things aren't flickering. You don't want to see any sparking at any outlets. So a good home inspector is actually going to go around and check all those outlets and check the switches and make sure that there's no shorts anywhere and that everything is grounded correctly and there's no potential for a hazard, as an electrical problem can be a very expensive and costly problem. All right, number 4. The cabinetry in the home. So we're talking about kitchen cabinets or vanities. Now, we talked about they could be painted over, and if they're in good condition, it's done well, that's not a bad thing. But what you want to really look at is the functionality of these things. So if they used old hardware, or they've kept the old hardware, or the cabinets are just old and not covered over, you want to check that drawers are actually opening and shutting correctly. Older cabinetry, some of the old pieces of the slides or the rails, they'll start to deteriorate and potentially break off. And you don't want to buy a home, especially in this marketplace at the height of the pricing that's going on, with cabinets that are falling apart, doors that are hanging or broken or not functioning correct. Same thing with your bathroom. You want to ensure that all the vanities are in good working order, that the doors and the drawers open, and that everything's sliding properly. The reason why this is actually somewhat important, even though people may say, why is that such a big deal? Because when you go to replace your cabinetry in your bathroom or your kitchen, it's not the cheapest thing to replace. there's a big renovation involved and it's a costly process. So you want to make sure that if you're buying something that hasn't been updated or upgraded, that it's still in good and working shape and nothing you have to worry about replacing or changing immediately where there's an immediate output of money. So you want to take close care and make sure that those things are functioning properly. Number 5, flooring. This one's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Now, when you go into a home that's been flipped, you're going to see several different things. You could see new carpeting installed, and if that's the case, you want to make sure it's installed well and it's tucked in under the baseboards and everything is pulled tight and it's flowing nicely. Sometimes people will try to do it themselves and they don't know what they're doing, and that carpet is going to be bunching up and be in horrible shape in a short amount of time with foot traffic. So you want to check the carpeting. If floors are refinished, this is a big one. You want to make sure that you really look and see the sunlight shining off those floors and you don't see what's called orange peel or bubbling in the floor. What would happen is someone would sand the floor to bring down the varnish back to its original wood and get ready to refinish it. But there's a certain preparation process of making sure those floors are clean and none of the dust has settled on the floor to ensure that when you refinish it, there's no dust particles that are blocking that varnish from shining up the floor. So you want to make sure that you're looking at those floors in the light and not seeing any of that bubbling, because that's a very poor floor job if that's the case. And eventually, once you move in, it's just going to bother you and it's going to look really bad. Now, if there's new flooring installed, hardwoods or tile or anything, you want to make sure that floors are lining up and there's no tripping hazards or there's no giant thresholds that are causing, a multiple inch rise in any of the rooms. Flooring can greatly enhance or take away from the flow and look of a property. So you want to make sure that floors are matched up properly, that heights are all correct, and that the flooring was installed very well. Because I will say that as exciting as it may be to get that new home, if you settle on some of these issues, they're going to bother you, and certainly when you go to resell it, it's going to be something that stands out. So pay attention to the floors. All right, and the very last item, doors and windows. Now, when a home is flipped, a lot of the times you're going to see doors replaced, you're going to see windows replaced, sometimes not. So you want to pay close attention to this. If a door was newly installed, you certainly want to make sure it's opening and closing correctly. It's got a good seal on it if it's an exterior door, and if it's an interior door, it's closing and latching without you having to lift or jam it or push too hard. Okay? So pay close attention to this. If it's an older door that was painted over, same thing. You want to make sure those doors latch and shut. The last thing you want is a door that's off kilter, not latching, and then just slowly opens up and never stays shut or doesn't shut properly. Bathroom doors would be a big concern as well. When it comes to windows, if windows were replaced, you're going to want to check them all, make sure they're opening and closing freely without any major aggressive pushing that you have to be doing. And if they're older windows, you want to open and close them and make sure that they're staying open. A lot of the older windows, especially if they were poorly done or if they're not a good quality window, the springs are going to go, they're going to drop, they're not going to stay open. And again, all these things are important because they become very costly for you to put money into a home that was flipped and may look good, but as they say, sometimes it just looks like lipstick on a pig and that home is still not in good condition. So be very careful when buying a home that is a flip property, and go back, take a look at this video if you're going to look at the house and make sure you're focusing on all these 6 areas. It is imperative for you to do so to protect the most valuable asset you're probably going to have in your life. As always, thank you so much for watching Josh Lioce's video blog. If you have any questions on buying a flip home or a distressed property and what that may mean, feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to chat on any of these topics. Or if there's a topic you'd like me to talk about, please send me a message and I'll certainly add it to the list. Otherwise, we will see you next time on Josh Lioce's video blog. Thanks for watching.